Hi there, my name is Grace Gladys Famoriyo, and I just want to share with you something that's been on my heart this week with regards to forgiveness and letting go of when people hurt you. Now, some of you know that I've written some books. Some of them includes Overcoming Emotional Baggage, Quit Hiding, Start Living, Healing a Discouraged Heart, Bounce Back, and also 1 Minute Tonic for the Heart. Now today really the focus of what I'm going to share with you is really from the book Quit Hiding, Start Living, How Women Can Free Themselves from Past Hurts. And well, ask me how I know about that subject. It's because I've been through a handful, if not more, challenging situations myself, whereby I found myself developing resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness, and a whole raft of other negative emotions towards people, individuals, or just groups of people, or just anybody who just crossed me the wrong way. I'm sure you understand that. Now in my book Quit Hiding, Start Living, I literally this week, somebody did something to me that just I'm like, Lord, okay, help me here. And of course I have to take the same medicine that I prescribe to other people. So I'm sure you probably felt this way, where somebody has trodden on your toes. We'll call it that because it was a lot more than that, but we will just call it someone trod on your toes, right? And in your mind, you just found yourself, after that situation happened, it's just been going around in your mind. Either the offense, what the person did, just time and time again keeps going around in your mind, time and time and time again. And before you say to yourself, stop, and then you carry on, in your journey, and then before you know it, that thought has come back into your mind. Or you find yourself, sort of like perhaps you didn't end the conversation the way you wanted it, so you're kind of talking to them, in your head about how you feel, and you're thinking about what you should have said to them, and and it just keeps going. If you can relate to that, just tune in. It's just a few minutes, but I just want to share with you, some of the things that I've had to do this week to just literally say, woman, stop. You need to stop this nonsense. And we need to get God involved and release that person from your heart, because you know what? It's a new year, it's a new season. You can't afford to allow any of that nonsense, that baggage to hold you up, in particular what God might want, in fact, not might, what God is doing in your life. So I had to have that conversation with myself. So this is really to encourage anybody else who might be out there who, for whatever reason, maybe somebody offended you of late, or maybe it's been a long-term thing whereby you are still struggling with something in the past. Well, let me start off by reading an excerpt to you from my book, Quit Hiding, Start Living, How Women Can Free Themselves from Past Hurts. Looking at chapter 8 in particular, page 109. Okay, the chapter's called Forgive and Love Again, and I'll just read the first paragraph of the book to you. The title is of that paragraph, or that section, is called A Lesson on Love. Okay, if anyone ever tells you forgiveness is easy, they're lying. Word. It's no wonder that many of us struggle with it, especially when we weigh up the injustice on the scales of our minds and the person or the people in question do not seem to deserve forgiveness. I'll just stop there. I'm sure you can all relate. In your mind, you're thinking, they don't deserve it. Worst case, or in fact, not even just worst case, but they've even haven't come back to say sorry. Or the people who, as far as they're concerned, they ain't done nothing. What's the big deal? What's the biggie? Okay, steam coming out my ears, sigh, thinking, Lord, what do I do? Now I had to go back to my book and remind myself, okay, you know what? And when I say my book, through me, my books tend to be living documents. As I'm writing, I'm going through that situation, even when it's published, and after, I am still living that, because we all live in a real world. Now, as far as I've noticed, I don't know, maybe anyone can correct me here, there isn't a forgiveness app. That would be useful. There isn't forgiveness software, nor is there a button on my forehead where I can just press and it's like, it zaps away the issue. So what do I do? Now, everything that I'm talking about here lies, the underlying principle is number one, you do have a relationship with God. And number two, you are open to allowing him into your heart to help you heal yourself from that issue that's happened and expunge that nonsense from your heart so that you can go back out again. Because the Bible does tell us in his word, it says we should guard our hearts with all diligence. And that's your responsibility. It's my responsibility to guard my heart, and it's your responsibility to guard your heart. So what do we do? Now, this afternoon I was listening to, I always, every so often I have the Bible in the background, and I was listening to the book of John. And I love it because, in John 15, especially verse 12, call it, Jesus's parting statement or parting advice, to the disciples. He said, love one another. And I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, I hear you. You're talking to me. Now, why do I make reference to that? Because when I was struggling with issues around forgiveness and bitterness and hiding as a result of past hurts, one of the strategies, in fact, there were two strategies that God showed me, and I learned it in a two-pronged approach. So I'll share with you how he got me on my journey to forgiveness. The first one is to learn about unconditional love. Now, I struggled with that because even sometimes when I felt God saying he loves me, we all do it sometimes. Oh, he loves me. Yeah, kind of thing. But we really don't understand what it means by him loving us. And when you get to grips with the understanding of God really loving you, it kind of takes a different stance. You start to walk differently. You see yourself differently because the King of Kings loves you. It's like, whoa, that's a biggie. Okay. So he really loves us. And I had to learn that. And so when he used to say things like, I love you, whether it be, me, my quiet time or reading the word, in my mind, I'm thinking, but how could you love me? Because you knew what I did yesterday. You know what I'm going to do today. And you know what? You even know what I'm going to do in my tomorrows. I'm going to offend you in one way or the other, but yet you keep saying you love me. How could you say that? And he really had to take me through a process to learn about this notion of unconditional love. And so through that experience, he now started to get me to think about how I can extend that same love to other people. In my mind, I'm thinking, no, you're God. I'm me. You don't know what they did to me. It's like, no. Then he keeps reminding me again, well, actually, you know that time when you come to me and you ask for forgiveness, and my grace and my love extends to you, I need you to do the same thing for other people as well. So I had to put that principle back in place. First one is about love. And I go back to that John 15:12 again. It says, love one another. So that was reminder number one. I have to love people, even though they may offend me, they may tread on my toes, even though they may do whatever it is, I have to love them. Number one. Okay. So number two is, when I eventually through the book got through the notion around forgiveness, love, understanding God's love towards me and then extending the same love to other people, I then had to move to the other part of that equation, which was around then releasing them from my heart. Now, we all know the scriptures in the Bible that talks about, forgiving our brothers. When Peter asked, how many times do I forgive? And Jesus Christ said 70 times 7. And you're like, the bits in the Bible where he talks about, well, if you don't forgive, I can't forgive you too. And so for me, that was the second hurdle I had to go over. How do I then release that person from my heart? Especially, and this is the question I had for God, especially when I know that as sure as tomorrow will come, okay, they are going to offend me again and again and again and again. And it's like somebody, you have this analogy of somebody coming near you and then stamping on your foot and saying, oh, sorry. And then, okay, a minute later, they come back and mash up your foot again and they say, oh, sorry. And you're like, for Pete's sake, which bit don't you get? Stop doing it. But, I had that conversation with God and I said, God, well, how do I forgive somebody who I know is going to, do the same thing again, time and time again? And he said, basically, well, you know what? The same way you come to me and say, forgive me for that thing that you do, and then you go around, whether it be a week, a month, a year later, you do the same thing again. Well, it's the same way. The same way you ask me to forgive you, I want you to do the same thing for them. And I'm like, okay. And for me, it took quite a bit of a mind shift to understand the notion of love and then extending that same grace and compassion that he demonstrates towards me, towards the other person. And so I made a conscious decision this week, and I said, you know what, number one, every time those mindsets and, thinking about mind, I should have said this and blah, 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 I decided I'm going to let those two principles come into play, loving other people and then taking the next step to release them from my heart. And part of that required me to pray. I just meditated on the word and I had that reminder, actually, no, you must forgive people in your heart. Now, is it easy, as I mentioned earlier on when I read the quote? Absolutely not. But with prayer, with studying on the word, and sometimes just sharing with somebody who might be able to just be a listening ear, and somebody who can just support you through prayer, that is really useful too. And that's one of the things I actually did. In fact, I did it to 2 people this week, just to, download and then have them, support me through prayer and just encourage me. And then through meditation of the scripture, and then just reminding myself of what God does for me in terms of loving me unconditionally and forgiving others, it enabled me to see things differently. So the same way I receive, I have to then give out to somebody else as well. So I'm hoping that this, just this brief session here has just really helped you, and just thinking about, how you can release people from your heart, because the enemy will always play almost like a tape, or sometimes you see something that triggers the reminder of the person's face or the issue or whatever it was, that will always keep coming time and time again. And I encourage you, do whatever it takes to make sure that, number one, you get to a place where you understand God's love towards you and extend it to other people, and number two, reach out and extend forgiveness. Now, by all means, when I talk about forgiveness, and when I share this a lot in the book, it's not necessarily mean having them back into your house, into your life. The strategy of how you deal with that really rests with your relationship with God. There's some times where I felt God saying, don't open that door again in terms of the relationship, but forgive them. There's sometimes where I needed to mend a relationship and have that person coming back into my life. There's different ways in which God will use to deal with issues around unforgiveness. So it's about your relationship with God and what is he saying about that particular relationship. And don't feel under pressure to have people back into your life if that's not what you feel you're supposed to do. But your commission is to love them unconditionally and release them from your heart, so you're not carrying any emotional clutter that can cause havoc in our lives, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, you name it, it can do that. So I'm hoping that, just a few words today would encourage you. As I said, for me, it really is a practical thing whereby on our daily journey, we are going to rub up on each other in one way or the other, because we're human. But I have to make sure that I love you and I release you from your heart. So whoever that person is, you know who you are. I love you and I release you from my heart. And I encourage you to do the same thing as well. And if you need some practical strategies, the book, and I'm not plugging it for no reason, you can see I'm reading it, constantly reading my own books. The book Quit Hiding, Start Living, really useful tool, because these were practical strategies that God taught me to help me deal with some of my past issues around hurts and unforgiveness and my hiding tendencies. And it's really helped me a great deal. So by all means, if that's something that's of useful to you, click the link, get your copy, and just let me know how you get on with it. And if you have any questions, by all means, fire away. Take care, God bless. Until then, live baggage free and stay blessed.